our DraftKings Sportsbook segment, I do want to talk about the Western Conference right now, which is just loaded. And a couple upstarts at the top of the conference as of today. The Minnesota Timberwolves with the number 1 seed, Oklahoma City with the 2nd seed. Oklahoma City, of course, one of 3 teams, that are top 5 in offensive and defensive efficiency, along with the Boston Celtics and the Philadelphia 76ers. I want to focus a little bit on where we are right now at essentially the 32 to 34 game mark of the season, almost to the halfway point. And I want to focus specifically on 3 teams who, as of today, are not top 8 seeds. And that is the Phoenix Suns, the Lakers, and the Golden State Warriors. And I was thinking about, coming into this show, teams that have disappointed. I think that's fair. And we are not a negative podcast. We are a positive podcast. We have given love to the Timberwolves. We've given love to OKC. Done a number of segments on the Philadelphia 76ers. We talked about the Pacers, the Magic, all these teams that maybe have exceeded expectations. And the Phoenix Suns and the Lakers and the Warriors have underperformed relative to expectations.
For sure. I think any Warriors person in that organization, any fan would say if you told them in January 2024 they're sitting outside of the play-in game, they're not going to be thrilled at that.
The high expectations. Golden State, of course, got up to a great start. Phoenix making the trade for Bradley Beal, having this big 3. They, to some degree, I think, get what I would call a little bit of a pass, given that we haven't seen a huge sample size with the Suns, with their 3 guys healthy. But just some real inconsistency from them. A number of their minimum players that they use to fill out the roster haven't played great. Devin Booker, after a really hot start, has not been as efficient, especially scoring the basketball, playing in that point guard role. And then you have the Lakers, who won the in-season tournament, but frankly have just not been a good offensive team.
I was going to ask about
they've just not been a good offensive team.
Is there besides the shooting, is there something that is noticeable with this team this year because they had similar problems last year, and then it seems like the playoffs came around and everything was magically fixed? Is that obviously to get into the playoffs, but is there something this year that feels different about the makeup of this group offensively for them?
It's funny because I think sometimes when you have certain teams, the margin for error is small. And so when this team was put together last year, and we again, I hesitate to use March and early April because of the way certain teams aren't necessarily playing well. Certain teams like Denver last year take their foot off the gas because they've secured a seed. So there's a lot of noise with data in March and April. But the Lakers were the second best defensive team. They went 16-7 after the trade. They got to the conference finals. So I think your expectations were that they were going to be right there in the mix. They don't have a huge margin for error offensively, specifically if they aren't shooting the ball well. They really do rely on LeBron and AD, and all of that is coming in the paint. And you see, like last night with the Heat, really just selling out and just overloading the court, strong side, all that stuff, and just grinding the Lakers offense to a halt. If LeBron James can't get out in transition, right, and we need 10 to 14 points that way. We need 40 to 45 points in the paint created by LeBron and AD, and then we've got to shoot somewhere near league average. And they've just been a bad shooting team all season.
The Warriors, with the Warriors in particular, we've spent a decent amount of time talking about them. What's the fix for this? It's a team that should not miss. You would think should not miss the playing game. What do you think? What do you think the next month looks like?
Well, we had Steve Kerr on Christmas Day. I thought it was interesting when we were asking about Brandon Pajimski, the rookie from Santa Clara, and his play recently heading into that game. And then, of course, he had a great Christmas Day game. Kerr was like, he's our guy. He's going to start going forward.
Yeah.
I don't know if anybody saw Klay Thompson's comments.
Pretty interesting.
Really introspective, where he talked about this conversation he had with Steve Kerr, where Kerr was basically like, you need to enjoy the last chapter of your career. And right now, there's a lot of anger. There's a lot of negative energy happening all the time, and that affects the group. And I think sometimes, and this was my experience, again, I didn't have a 10-year run with the core group, and there has been some guys in and out, but for the most part, they've had a lot of guys outside of the big three there for a number of years. And I think sometimes what happens with the group is the energy changes for players. The energy changes for the group, and the energy you're bringing. And this is not a knock on Klay at all. You can point to Draymond Green and the Jordan Poole incident last year coming off the championship. You can point to all the personal stuff that has happened with Andrew Wiggins. You know, this is not an analytical debate here.
Yeah.
This is really just about the energy that people bring to a group. And I think the one guy, in that core group that has been very consistent, at least from the outside, and at least when you talk to people internally with the Warriors, is Steph. In not just the play. I'm talking about the energy, right? The attitude day to day, the joy of the game. And it hasn't been reciprocated by a lot of guys. And I think that just weighs on you when you're with the same group night to night. And I said this a few weeks ago, and I'm still willing to hold out that at some point this team will click. At some point when Draymond's back and hopefully he's playing at a high level, this team will click. We've seen enough, I think, from Jonathan Kuminga and from Brandon Pajimski that you're like, okay, there's a rotation there. Dario Saric on a minimum deal has been awesome for them relative to contract value. His performance has been great. There's enough there. Some of the stuff that's interesting to me, and I don't want to get too far into the Warriors here, but some of the stuff that's interesting to me is the late game stuff. The clutch games, they played in a ton of them. They played in 26 now, and they played in 33 games. They played in 26 clutch games. They're now 500 in those clutch games. And I think some of the win-loss, right, it can go either way. A couple plays come down to it. Some of it is just like a size thing for me. And this is not Steph has made more clutch shots, I mean, over the last 10 years than anybody just off the top of my head.
Do we have a
I don't have the clutch shots on him, but he's been great in the fourth quarter this year. Like, some of it though is just size down the stretch, like bigger wings, offensive possessions. They don't have that on either side, and some of that is that to me.
Before we go, one other team I wanted to ask you about is the Houston Rockets.
Yeah,
17-15, 9th in net rating, 4th in D. I think there was with the free agent signings with Ime, there was a lot of excitement about where this team was possibly going to go heading into the year. But at this point now, do we have enough of a sample size to say this is a team that we may be talking about, competing in a first round playoff series or something like that? Or is there something besides just Şengün, who's obviously been incredible, that we can look at as like, okay, this team is a real,
I don't want to discredit what they've done. I don't want to discredit their team because I do think they have a really good identity.
Yeah.
And it starts defensively. Şengün has been awesome. I called him as one of the breakout players for the year. I'm glad that NBA fans that aren't Houston Rockets fans are this guy's becoming a household name. But I just think when you look at the top 11 in the Western Conference, all right, Golden State, let's say they're clicking. I would envision them having a chance to win a first-round series. The Lakers, I would envision them at their best. They have a chance to win a first-round series. Phoenix, at their best, has a chance to win a first-round series. Dallas with Luka and Kyrie, they're in a game.
Yeah,
they're in a game. They're in a series. Pelicans, when they're healthy, and their two guys and their star role players are playing their best, they have a chance in a series. De'Aaron Fox has been All NBA again. They have a chance in a series. The Clippers, rather, who I think have a real chance to be a Western Conference contender here. They're good. Denver, the defending champion. Then you have OKC and Minnesota. So, Houston's been really good, but of all those teams I named,
They're not. Yeah.
I would say in terms of playoff success, I'm probably placing them at like 11th right now, and that's not a knock on them. I want to do this real quick before we get to Derek White. This is interesting. So, Golden State Warriors, the Lakers, and the Phoenix Suns, they opened on Western Conference Championship odds as the second, third, and fourth highest odds after the Denver Nuggets to win the Western Conference. The Nuggets have remained largely unchanged throughout the year. The Warriors started at plus 650. They're now at plus 1,600. The Lakers at plus 750. They're now at plus 1,100. The Phoenix Suns, interesting enough, started at plus 450, had the second best odds, and they're largely unchanged. They're at plus 550 now. So the bettors and the sports books are still believing in the Phoenix Suns, but a lot of movement. The one team that has moved up is the LA Clippers. Went from plus 1,000 to plus 550. They're now tied with the Suns for the second best odds after the Denver Nuggets. So lots of movement in terms of the line for Western Conference champion. We talked about having 12 teams. The Utah Jazz, I'll mention them because they've played great as of late, won 7 of their last 10. They're now 16-19, had a crazy game last night against the Pistons. It's a gauntlet, man.
Even Memphis with John back.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of nights you're I know it's the NBA, but there's not a lot of nights you're walking into an arena being like, oh yeah, we got this tonight. Like 100%.
I totally agree. And, with the Knicks making that move for OG, I think their roster makes more sense now. They were a little guard heavy. I do think they'll miss quickly in terms of his scoring with the second unit and the ability to run offense through him. It's going to kind of change their rotation. We saw that last night in the game I called. Randall subbing out early so that he can have the run with the second unit to start the second and fourth quarter. But even the East, Miami's been great. Indy can win any game on night to night. Orlando, a clear identity on the defensive end. Of course, the top three: Boston, Milwaukee, Philly, Cleveland, who's had a number of injuries. Like the East is solid too. It's the league is. I mean, outside of the bad teams, the league has 24 teams now.
Not to spoil, and we should get to the interview. Not to spoil anything that Derek said, but as you've said a million times on the show, and as he echoes, there's just a lot of good players.
There's a lot of talent.
There's a lot of good. There's not like there's 4 good players and the rest of the team is just there. There's a lot of good players, so they're gonna be spread out.
One thing for anybody that listened to the Tim Legler interview over the holiday week, we had a segment that we were going to do, and we ran out of time. We went deep on a couple of the topics, and we ran out of time. Tim played on one of the worst teams in NBA history, a Dallas Mavericks team in 93-94, the year before they got Jason Kidd in the draft, that started the season 2-39. I was on an Orlando team that had multiple double-digit losing streaks my last year after Dwight got traded and Stan left. We're going to do a deep dive on what it's like being on bad teams on next week's Old Man of the Three Things. And I already know that Tim Legler has some great stories from that Dallas Mavericks year. DraftKings Sportsbook is giving new customers an exclusive offer just for NBA fans. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now and use code JJ. New customers can get $150 instantly in bonus bets for betting $5 plus score NBA League Pass on us. Only on DraftKings Sportsbook with code JJ. The crown is yours. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 plus, age varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. League Pass reward issued as promo code to redeem subscription and must be claimed by January 15th, 2024. See DraftKings.com/promos for eligibility and deposit restrictions, terms, and responsible gaming resources.